Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Norfolk Southern Cedartown District at HO scale. On this layout update, we're going to be looking at some of the scenery work that I've done recently going north from Carrollton up toward Buckhannon. So if you recall from our last layout update, I had completed the scenery around the yard in Carrollton. Um, so covering the yard and the depot area there, and I've started working north toward Buckhannon and Cedartown now. So we'll slowly go through the additional scenes that I've been working on lately. Um, First, we come to the crossing at Highway 16 on the north side of Carrollton. Beside Highway 16, there is a store called Everything Outdoors. It's like a farm and feed supply store. I've got that represented here. They've got a little shed out front, and then their main brick building as well, and a little silo in the back. This is a sort of cropped and compressed version of the real facility, but I feel like it incorporates a lot of the sort of iconic details at that store. In the foreground here, just north of Highway 16, we have SLM Recycling, one of the industries on the Cedartown District, where they load scrap metal into gondolas. This is a fairly simple facility, but I'm pleased with the way it came out. It's a gravel and dirt lot by a little spur off the main line. I've got chain link fencing around it. Got a Diecast Masters Cat 320D excavator along with a 3D printed grapple on there for loading the scrap. And if you watched my last video on weathering, you'd recognize this car, this Walther's scrap gondola here. Continuing north, we go through some very rural scenery between Carrollton and Buckhannon, coming around the peninsula here. Got sort of a pasture out here in the front and trees along the background. And from there, we get into scenery that's not quite finished yet at Blossman Gas in Buckhannon. So I've started working on that scene, but still have a long way to go there. So that wraps up the work that I've been doing on the layout over the past few months. Now we'll go to a video of a train passing through one of these new scenes. Here we see GO1 with an ES44 DC leading an SD60E. So in addition to providing update on the scenery progress I've been making over the past few months. I was also asked if I could provide a copy of my track plan on the channel here, and I realized that I hadn't done that up to this point. So I put together a few charts showing both my track plan, how the track arrangements compare with the prototype locations, and then what the current status of each of the scenes looks like on the layout. Um, so here's my overall track plan. The room is about 19 feet by 17 feet, plus or minus a few inches in each dimension. You can see here that I cover everything from Cedartown down to Sonoya. Obviously, to cover that much area, some selective compression and some cropping had to be done to make these things fit. But I think I've captured the feel of a lot of the important scenes along the Cedartown District. At this point, the track work, wiring, and ballast are 100% complete. I've got a base level of ground foam down around about 90% of the layout. And then, as you've seen in this video up until this point, I've got scenery complete on about 25% of the layout. The total mainline run from Cedartown all the way to Sonoya is about 120 feet. Then I used a 28-inch minimum radius, although I preferred to use 30 to 32 inches where possible. Then, as I've discussed in some of my previous videos, operations on the layout focus on the three locals, G01, G67, and G87, along with the ability to run coal and limestone trains to Georgia Power Plant Winslee. So, breaking the layout plan down by individual scene, first we'll look at Cedartown. I've got a snippet of the track plan over here on the right, a snippet out of Google Earth here showing how my track plan matches the real life location, and then a picture of the actual layout itself where you can see the tracks laid out. You can see I've got the main line, the siding, the storage track, and the old interchange track here at Cedartown. Moving south, still in Cedartown at this point, but on the south side of town, looking at the Hat D transload. The track plan compared to the screenshot out of Google Earth, they're at an angle to each other, but you can see that it's still a right-hand turnout coming out of off of the main line at Hat D. Um, you can see how I've replicated that location on my actual layout. Again, no real scenery at this point yet, but as I'm working my way north, that'll be one of the areas I tackle pretty soon. South of Hat D, we come to Blossman Gas, located in Buckhannon. In the time frame that I've chosen to model this facility in, so up until about 2018 or so, there was just a single track here, along with a number of the LPG vessels. Since that time, the facility has been sold to Legend Terminal, and they've expanded quite a bit, adding another track and a lot more unloading capacity in here. But due to space constraints on my layout, I chose not to model the new expanded facility. Now we'll look at SLM Recycling in Carrollton. This picture here shows a view of about 90% of the portion of the layout that's got scenery at this point. So the yard at Carrollton, along with SLM Recycling in the area around that. Um, I've included the two snippets from Google Earth here. So SLM Recycling over here. You can see it's that one track that comes off of the main line, like I've got on my layout. Just south of SLM Recycling, you cross Georgia Highway 16, which you can see on the printout from Google Earth here. Then you come into Carrollton. I've modeled the main line, the sidings on either side of the main line, and then one of the two stub-ended tracks at Carrollton on my layout. I didn't really have room for both, so I chose to cut one of those out when building the layout here instead of trying to cram another track into an already tight scene and potentially have to reduce my aisle width at this location even further. South of the yard in Carrollton, you've got Southwire. I've replicated two of the tracks where they unload plastic pellets, along with the track that gets tank cars loaded with plasticizer. And I've tried to replicate those as accurately as possible. Right now, I've just got mock-ups for the buildings there, but at some point they'll be replaced with actual models of some of these structures that you can see on the Google Earth screenshot here. Next, we have Noonan. where in real life there's a little runaround track that's normally used for storing off-spot center beams, along with the Noonan transload facility. You can see on my layout they're separate, or in real life they're separated slightly, so the runaround track is a little to the south of the turnout for Noonan transload, but due to space constraints on my layout, I've got the Noonan transload track and the siding pretty much right next to each other. Um, you can see how the that all looks on the actual layout over here. Final scene that we'll look at is at Sonoy, down at the south end of the line, where again there's an industry and a runaround track, and I've modeled both the industry and the runaround track here. The industry is Winpack, which takes in plastic pellets and uses it to manufacture films for like food packaging. And then again, the runaround track is just down to the south of Winpack. Winpack actually has two spurs that come into it, but again, due to space constraints, I'm only modeling one of those. So that wraps up my update for this time around. We'll close out with this picture of a GO1 passing by, SLM Recycling, showing off some of the recent scenery work that I've done. Thank you all for watching. I'll be back with another layout update at some point that covers more scenery working north from Buckhannon and Blossman Gas this time, so stay tuned for that. Also, stay tuned this Sunday morning. I've set up a premiere for a video of some prototype railroading action. Uh, Throwback to 2015 on Norfolk Southern's Atlanta North End, looking at trains 370 and 371, which ran between Rome and Chattanooga, and typically featured classic powers such as SD40-2s and B32-8s. So make sure to stay tuned. I think you can set up a notification reminder for when that premieres. That'll be 9 o'clock Central Time on this upcoming Sunday morning, December 21st. So please make sure to give that a watch when it's released. Um, yeah, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.